Good afternoon, everyone. It's been a long time since I've made one of these videos. A lot's kind of changed, and I want to kind of touch bases here for briefly. Not really explain some things, just kind of put some stuff out there, and maybe some of this will make sense why you're going to start seeing some of the stuff that you are for me. 25 or so years ago, actually before that, I've been messing around with garage selling, doing sales and going places and whatnot, and fairly young. My parents had got divorced. My dad had met this lady, and her father was very successful, multi-millionaire off garage selling. And he would buy gold and other stuff, but there were two things that I took from this thing. He gave my dad and us at the time $100 to go to garage sale and try to find some stuff to sell. We found a bike and a few other things, and he went and sold them at the flea market, and made a few bucks. And the other thing was everything's always for sale. And so what he would do was, I'm originally from Georgia, and we lived maybe an hour or so away from Atlanta. So he'd go garage selling in Atlanta, Georgia, and the garage sale gave him an opportunity to have a conversation with someone and speak. And so he would go up and give them a flyer and ask for other stuff, and that's how he found stuff. And so, this has been ingrained in me for a very long time. And, as I grew up and we moved to Indiana from the north, and things drastically changed, I shifted away from a lot of that stuff. I was still kind of picking and doing some stuff, but it wasn't really a core focus. At that point in my life, I was kind of trying to figure out who I was. Ended up going off down to Florida maybe a month or so after I graduated high school. I don't remember. Tried to go to technical school and get a relationship going on with my dad and whatnot, and obviously that path didn't work out, but I started buying and reselling stuff off this government website called propertyroom.com. I was buying bikes, bike lots up around Daytona Beach. They had a warehouse in Orlando, and at that time no one knew about any of this stuff, any of the government stuff, auctions. This was probably, 17, 18 years ago or so, 19 years ago. And you'd be able to get these lots for next to nothing. And so I'd buy these lots and I'd bring them up and I'd start selling them to the guys that were renting out bikes on the beach to be able to rent out. And they're making, ads on Craigslist. And just kind of progressing off that. I'd never really had a job, so I was always bouncing around with stuff with that. Me and a buddy, Pritchard, I'd moved up to Ohio, and we had started this business on Craigslist. I can't remember the name of it. Some sort of trash clean out business where essentially we were doing clean outs, advertising on Craigslist, and we got a few different jobs. My dad at the time was one of the high up construction managers for the Southeast region for Crown Castle. And so he oversaw a bunch of, at the time, the infrastructure being built for the cell phone towers and whatnot. But he had some jobs he had completed, and he's like, hey, I've got a bunch of this copper wire down here. If you want it, you can have it. Me and Pritchard, I want to say that night, we didn't have really anything. Jumped in the truck and took off down to Florida. And shortly we get down there and come to find out it's not what we think it is, right? It's got this thick ass sheathing on the outside of it, and it's copper that's wrapped around it. It's not wire, and the game plan, changed completely, and ended up having to sell that stuff on Craigslist and had a guy come and, buy it for scrap. And I think we ended up losing out on that deal. His grandpa ran some auction businesses, and, we'd set up the auctions during the week, and then, so you get to touch and see everything. And then during the auctions, you could buy stuff, and, we bought this big pole barn. like $20 or so, and ended up stripping it down. Before I left, I think we got it down to the joists, the frame, stripped all the metal and all that stuff off. Ended up scrapping it, selling we bought basement rights and sold wavy pane glass out of the old farmhouses. Just a bunch of those type of things. My main focus, just for full transparency, because it'll eventually come out with all this, I was chasing cannabis. Cannabis was a big thing. I thought it was the thing that I was going to do. Recreational cannabis, legalized cannabis. And so a lot of this was kind of just the side thing. And so as I was building up the cannabis startup, I started doing a lot of stuff on Facebook, and at the time Facebook was kind of starting to pick up a little bit, and they had Marketplace going, and so I started creating these picture memes, essentially kind of funny, junk in your backyard, trash for cash, all these different things. And then having some ads and kind of going to the Craigslist and to the Facebook groups, and start sourcing like crazy and finding all sorts of crazy opportunity, and still chasing the cannabis business model. And that kind of started to take off a smidge, and I ended up learning some good lessons. That business venture ultimately didn't work out or pan out. However, through the lessons, which obviously at the time didn't make sense, connecting the dots, looking back now, man, it's absolutely wild journey to kind of get to this point. But and so we ultimately ended up losing everything. We lost a house, and 10 acres, jobs. For me, it was kind of my dignity and fucking everything else, and ended up having to move into a trailer. And this ordeal only kind of got worse, and we didn't have running water right for months and months, and electricity that barely worked, and so we'd have to get creative and go to houses for sale, get water, and shower at friends' houses and use the bathroom outside, and and kept kind of doing the buying and reselling thing, obviously, and ended up making a few bucks, and we ended up finding a house that we were able to put $5,000 down. And I ended up getting a job. Shortly after that, I found out I was going to have a son, and got a job as a lead designer in sales for one of the largest landscape businesses in our area, 8-figure business, and kind of got an executive role with them and started learning the game on that. And there were two very specific things that happened during that time that are very important too. So anyone that's familiar with landscaping and that stuff, when you get into the details of it, plants are described by their Latin name, and so it becomes kind of difficult in a sense. And there's a lot of variations of this stuff out there. So when you're in design, especially high-end design, everything obviously is very intentional, has purposes, and so explaining things, and I'm not going to bore people to details, but when you're trying to achieve like 3 seasons of color, right, like color during the spring, summer, and fall, there's variables that come into play. And so at the time, we were walking around outside kind of doing a learning lesson, and started looking at some plants, and for me, it just made absolutely no sense, why we couldn't, use our phones, for instance, and kind of start trying to identify some of this stuff, because there's a very specific, everyone heard it, but my math teacher, Mr. Wade, you'll never have a calculator in your pocket. And, sure enough, now we have computers and stuff, obviously, but it just didn't make sense. And so, I played around with that a little bit, and then got into some of the digital measuring stuff, and like using satellite maps to measure. And at the time, there was like another guy that worked there that was the project manager, and he was working on an estimating app to kind of expedite some of this stuff. And so I ended up getting an opportunity with them to sell some used equipment that they had, and I realized it was underpriced. And so she said I could price it up. Anything over what it was asking, I could keep. And then we'd split the deal 50-50. And so I ended up marking the stuff up, posting it in a Facebook group, and sold it within 24 hours. I think I made $6,000 or $7,000 off of that. I didn't have anything invested in it, and took that and dove heavier into the the ad type stuff. And at the time, I was chasing motorcycles, vintage dirt bikes and stuff, and ended up within a 4-month span kind of going from, I think it was a 20 by 20 building to a 60 by 40. Ended up going from the smallest, skip the medium, up to the largest they had to offer. At that time, Facebook was wild, and I was all over the place. I was doing sports cars and vintage dirt bikes and buying all sorts of other things. At one point, I probably had the world's largest collection of vintage vacuum tubes or radio tubes. I bought out a bunch of stuff, the old South Bend bike store down off Western, and my shop eventually filled up. And at the time, the Facebook algorithms were out of control. At this point, I was running simultaneous ads. I'd created my own Facebook groups at the time that were just specifically to run ads to the marketplace. And I'd have all sorts of different ads targeting, women who, divorced their husbands that had a bunch of stuff left over, and up buying, a bunch of fishing stuff, just a bunch of different things. And so I was testing, and, I think at one point, I generated a few thousand motorcycle buying opportunities in a month. My marketplace, it almost seemed like every couple minutes, someone was responding and stuff. And within my local demographic, I didn't travel very far. I was able to source a whole bunch of things. A series of unfortunate events happened out of my control. I kind of fell back in that depressive state, and essentially ended up losing. I ended up walking away from that business. I had a $700 tab I didn't pay, and I kind of said screw it and walked away. And so, for a second time, I've actually lost a few times. That would have been probably the third time in my life. But the second time, I just kind of walked away from all my possessions, tools, everything I had. That was kind of a tough thing. Found out, my oldest is nonverbal autistic. Anyone that's had to deal with any of that stuff, it was extremely challenging for me. I'm still trying to figure out all my shit, and trying to understand my stuff. I didn't have a father in my life, and just everything from the failure side of things. And as a guy, having a son, a boy is like the pinnacle of everything. And then finding out that they have this issue that it's gonna make things different, kind of changes things. Baseball games, a lot of that stuff don't necessarily exist. And so I struggled with that a lot, and I ultimately ended up burying myself in work. And it became pretty apparent that things were going to be very different for us. And, when you spend a lot of your time on kind of the path that I did, there is no backup plan. I don't have 401ks. I didn't, get into the union or something when I was young. And so, everything's on your shoulders. And, I didn't fit this round peg, square hole type thing. And, so I got a few different jobs, and, ended up selling cars and This was before I had Colton originally the first time, before I met Lindsay. Who's been a trooper along this. Anyway, so after the canvas stuff and then all of that stuff, I ended up, what did I do then? So I lost the shop, and then just this buying and reselling stuff. Kind of trying to chase other things, not taking the stuff serious. Obviously, I was still kind of embarrassed and ashamed, kind of about this. I always felt like I was smarter than just fucking, excuse my French, for anyone. It's a very, got a lot of blood, sweat, and tears invested in all this. But I was kind of embarrassed or ashamed to talk about it. Obviously, you know, picking the way that I do stuff, it's not just garage selling stuff. It's kind of a dirty profession. Perception of it's dirty. And I just kept kind of doing it, and it was really a necessity, you know, of being able to survive. And, you know, kind of along that path, obviously there's just an immense amount of opportunities and lessons and different things that kind of happen that, you know, you're always kind of falling away, and you're just not really understanding the intent of how they play into the bigger picture of things. But, you know, I was too ignorant to quit, essentially. And, you know, kind of kept progressing and kind of, you know, the same repetitive theme, just not taking it serious, really. And during that time, though, there's been this other, like, alter ego of me, which has always been this, like, creative inventor side of it. And I would always kind of attribute it to, oh, just, you know, thinking from a business thing. And I would push it off and ignore it because I always called it my nerd side. I was very aggressive. And that's kind of who I was for a while. And I didn't really want to show the weakness side of stuff. I definitely didn't want to show the nerd side of stuff. And so I ignored it. And, you know, but there's been a very similar pattern I mean, for a very, very, very long time, ever since I was a kid. You know, very young, I've been chasing a lot of this stuff. I was chasing idea stuff during high school, you know, those infomercials on the idea stuff. I talked to this business called Toy Barn in Dublin, Ohio, if anyone's familiar with any of that place, 18 years ago, about this customized car business. You know, we had some stuff going on in Florida, me and some buddies, and, you know, came up with this hood that slid up, and we had talked with a car manufacturer at the time. I think it was eracings.com on doing some stuff. And but again, it wasn't me, I guess. And so anyway, so fast forward and the whole thing from the trailer, you know, before we left there and got this other house, my cousin had added me to the sales talk group and ended up coming across Ryan Stewman and kind of started seeing a different side of stuff that people kind of started thinking similar to me, and struggled and failure was kind of a part of the journey. But I was still extremely embarrassed and ashamed. It's taken me a long time to get over that. Actually, it's why I haven't done any of this stuff. And so I started kind of, you know, falling in the shadows and whatnot. And eventually kind of got to a point, you know, I ended up joining something they offered, a mastermind, and got around, you know, some people and kind of got to see a side of stuff that I never had seen before. You know, living in a small town and, you know, from Georgia, you know, I didn't really know anyone that owned exotic cars or, you know, had all this fancy stuff. I had met people and people that came in my life, but not in the sense of how this was. And it started showing me a different side of stuff that I wasn't aware of. And so, you know, I'm on the spectrum ish, and so there's other traits that I ignore, you know, like kind of like the analytical, you know, pattern type stuff. And so, you know, you're able to see stuff. And what ended up happening was I ended up being able to link up with some people that kind of taught me I just need to kind of change my way of thinking a little bit, which kind of started the snowball effect. Ultimately led to me trying to do something with the buying and reselling, and there's so many inefficiencies. It's part of some of the other videos. See, this is already 20 something minutes long. I started developing an app, essentially trying to sell things live. Essentially, we were going to bridge the gap between how long it took to sell things, and from a volume concept. And at the time, I'd partnered with a large thrift store, and they were throwing away 200,000 pounds of clothing a year. They couldn't figure out what to do with it, and so it was problem solution with everything. So the solution was to be able to sell stuff quickly, volume, and we were going to move bulk and try to plug away at the other resellers from a bulk standpoint. And got into it, got to a pitch deck, numerous phone calls, and a couple phone calls with an app developer who had worked on a bunch of projects for Red Bull and some other big names. And he got to walk me through this process. But the common theme was, we got to get that stuff out of your head, Jim. We got to, build an algorithm, a flowchart. And I didn't understand what any of this stuff meant. So, we had this conversation, and he got into stuff, and he started talking about, like, he had a PhD, I think, or a whole bunch of different things, and some different, very, very smart. But he's talking about, like, human biology, and I didn't understand what he meant. I'm like, why does that matter with, like, building algorithms and whatnot? And so the example that we went through, the exercise, was making a peanut butter and jelly sandwich. And to summarize everything, how we do things, you and I, or whoever's watching this, do things are going to be drastically different. But the end result will kind of be similar, right? However, if we apply that, to like coding or something, right? The details are actually going to matter there. We're making the PB&J, won't necessarily, right? But applying that exercise into like a coding aspect allows you to kind of get to a point where, as I'm doing this stuff, some things weren't kind of aligning with, like, it was more of a yes no, kind of like a an either or, right, on a flow chart. Well, this happens and do this, and so what I couldn't understand is, like, well, the hows and all these different things, right? And so it became super complicated, and I ended up walking away. I wasn't very confident, no reason, anything. And just kept plugging away at this. Ended up getting a job with a guy, through the Apex. I ultimately got to learn a bunch of different positions. Which ultimately didn't end up working out. However, at the time, one of my positions, I was the CMO, and I didn't want it. I was placed there. I understood some of the stuff. I'm very clear with it, but I also understand, that we all have, 3 things we're very good at, and there's some variables to that, but, we delegate the stuff we're not at. It's immediately, if not sooner. And so he puts me in this position, and immediately my thought is I got to delegate myself out. And so started working on the whole VA side, building all that stuff, automating the entire processes, building SOPs, everything on top of the marketing. And what was pretty cool is I got to do this report. And I was speaking earlier about analyzing. I love the research. I love that side of stuff. And so I got to do this report on the home improvement industry. And I wanted to develop this marketing bot, right? I was going to take myself, make a better version of myself. We were going to turn into a marketing, and he wanted me to present all this stuff before I left, and he ultimately ended up firing me. Thought the idea was horrible. Nothing's going that way. We're also trying to build some bots and sequencing based on chasing hellstorms. They were horrible ideas, right? And so okay, so that was about 2 years ago. And what ended up happening was, we'll just kind of tie some of this together, and then I'll fill in a lot of other details and missing parts later. I kept plugging away with it. Well, I eventually kind of started figuring out stuff from a flow chart, and started building. And what ended up happening is ChatGPT and essentially AI came onto the scene, and it had kind of been around for a little bit. And so I started messing around with that, and I quickly realized how crazy and powerful it is. I don't think I think most people see AI as like a tool, as like a screwdriver or something, when really it's a manufacturing facility. And when I say that, it's because you have all these different platforms, and they all do different things, and some do better than others. And again, kind of a flowchart thing. It's all essentially prompting and details, and like trying to get to understand things. And so you can do stuff with things, with this stuff that's just absolutely wild. And one of the big things that for me that was a problem to solve was the reasoning and logic behind decision making on the AI side. Why did I make a decision to do what I did, and how did I get here? Why am I making that decision, and why am I not making that decision? What am I going to do if this decision doesn't work? And not realizing at the time that, because I didn't understand any of this stuff, right? I'm ignorant, just kind of doing my own stuff, getting some hints from places, and just kind of going ham. Well, come to find out, they have these things right now, called like neural networks, right? I explain it as nodes that speak to other nodes. These nodes, they say they're potentially AI agents. AI agents, kind of a sequence of events to do something, and then you stack AI agents. You'll have like an AI agent for marketing or research or whatever it is, right? And the AI agents are defined by their prompts and what they are. And so you see a big thing right now where everyone's kind of selling and pushing these AI agents. Because it's really the wild, wild west right now, and it's crazy powerful stuff. And I've kind of got to a point where I've just got to kind of step up. Because I feel if you don't understand the reasoning and the logic behind a lot of this stuff, you're not the AI agents are. It's not really going to make sense, right? It's why guys pay $10,000 and $20,000 to go from this mastermind, this mastermind, and this mastermind, right? And we'll talk more about that, down the road. But what ultimately ended up happening was I've developed my own AI, right? And I've got my own reasoning and logic behind it, which they say is kind of one of the big things to solve right now, which dips into like, physics and quantum computing and mechanics, all these just like very intense things that I could have never ever imagined. However, I wasn't able to really be blinded by anything, and I just took all of this experience, multiples of 20. I couldn't even imagine how much time I've invested in this. Leading up up until a few weeks ago, since the fall, I was doing 120, 130 hours a week. I was sleeping on my floor, trying to tie all this stuff together, diving very hard on the, philosophical side of this, stoicism, theology, religion, spirituality, studying a whole bunch of different things, trying to make sense of everything. And it was kind of this crazy aha moment, which led to kind of the final touches where I'm at right now, which is where we're at here, because I've been doing a bunch of testing, and I'm pretty much at a point right now where, so I'm going to start releasing stuff in phases. The first phase are going to be, I'm going to value stack. I'm going to give away a bunch of stuff for free, prompts for doing things, keywords, places that you go to find stuff, a whole bunch of stuff. I've been set off by some of these guys that are selling stuff, right? And one of them was this baseball dude, and they're selling these things for, ungodly amounts of money. They're teaching these very singular things, and, I'm done with it. I've been in this position. I've struggled. I wish someone was there in my position to come do the same thing. So that's me, and I'm going to do it. So buckle up. I've got a partnership with Ludex. If you're not familiar with who they are, one of the big dogs in the AI card, sports cards, non-sports cards category. They are partnered with eBay, and some other big names. I had a conversation just a few days ago with former high up executive within eBay. I mean, so it's time for me to start sharing some of this stuff. So again, different levels. There's going to be PDFs. I'm going to have a 3-day crash course on how to go from, kind of the beginning to profiting right away, sourcing, using a lot of the technology that we have at our fingertips, Google Maps, the AI side of stuff, building AI agents, valuations of things, how to source, how to, do a lot of things that I've done. Middleman deals are just trying to bring eyes to certain things on a real estate side. Multiple times, having opportunities to bridge gaps between an owner and a seller on real estate, right? $1 million homes, how to actually solve a lot of these problems and understand why you're solving the problems. So I'm going to tier that, and then I'm going to have a higher end coaching class, and we're going to dive into this. We're going to dive into it very heavy. It's kind of a wide open space right now. There's a bunch of folks that are jumping, in on the AI side. And, there's not a whole bunch of folks within this space. You have the whole computer side of stuff who explain it from their side. And so I'm going to try to break it down and make it a little bit more relatable and understandable. And so I hope I'm going to be able to convey that message. I didn't want to have to do any of this stuff. I don't see myself doing any of this stuff. This isn't what I wanted to do, right? However, I think there's immense value. I hear it all the time. People tell me, and the way I perceive myself, I kind of ignored it. And so I'm doing it. So we're here. So bear with me as we go through and work out, some of the kinks here in the beginning. I want to be a massive asset if I can. Within this industry, I've got some other wild, crazier stuff within this industry that I want to do that can't really be discussed right now. There's some other partnerships and stuff, and some, Fortune 10 companies, Fortune 5 companies, behind the scenes stuff, within defense and automation and dronage. And so I ask all of this if you feel like, any of this is relatable. I ask that you just consider maybe supporting me, buying my program. I've never asked of it from anyone. So I'm going to ask this time. So when I release this stuff, if you want to support me, I'd love for you to do that. Let me show you how I can help you. I assure you that we can't lose. And so have some faith. It's a very not niche area. The more I start talking about a lot of this, I think the more of it's going to make sense. So yeah, that's it. This is 30 something minutes already. Anyone that stuck around and watched the whole thing, I appreciate it. Don't mean to bore you. I'm going to release some more stuff today. We're going to dive into more stuff. I'm going to do a lot more of these videos. And I'm going to play into this vessel concept, which you'll hear me speak about more in the future here. And so, yeah, this is kind of part of that. Just more of the act of just kind of doing and, you know, not overthinking it. So if anyone has any questions, reach out. I appreciate anyone that's stuck around on this journey that has, you know, been there, good or bad, who has done whatever. It really doesn't matter at the end of the day. Life's not where we start, it's where we finish. So we're here right now. I'm very, very, very excited. I'm very excited to actually essentially be able to help some people. There's a lot of purpose in this that I didn't really understand, that all kind of makes sense now. So I hope that that you stick around for this journey. It's going to be very spicy, I can guarantee you that. If anyone is interested and would like to talk further on, you know, some of the bigger stuff, you know, I had a discussion last week with a guy. They're seeking, I think, maybe 8 figures in funding with the state of Texas on some AI training and whatnot. And so we got some other stuff in the works, and I've got this ranking system that may apply in with some of that stuff. But I'd love to have a discussion with anyone and show, you know, maybe help bridge some of the gaps between some of the stuff that you may not understand, or how it may work with your business, or how you know, you could incorporate it within. There's a lot of misunderstandings around a lot of this stuff right now. There's a lot of people that really don't understand the tool and the utility behind it. It's just a lot of very like surface level fluff right now. And so I've been testing a lot of this on Lindsay. She's not very familiar, obviously, with any of this stuff. And so, you know, outside of that, this isn't something, I don't want to bore you. I'm going to sum this up. This isn't something that I'm just like theorizing. Guys, I've literally sold, I don't even know, multiple 10,000, you know, plus items. My best day, I think I sold 3,000 items in one day a couple years ago, on a retail used goods commodity market. This isn't selling like, you know, 300 strainers to Amazon. This is a completely different market over here. You know, the conversations and like, you know, I've partnered with other businesses and, you know, massive thrift stores, and been able to source stuff at a level that I don't explain, so most probably can't even conceive. So we're going to dive into all that stuff, right? I'm going to share everything. There's nothing that I'm going to hold back outside of like some of the other like stuff that I can't necessarily talk about right now. Everything else I'm going to lay out, so you can't lose. So yeah, I appreciate it. Thanks for hanging around, and look forward to some of these releases tonight and more of these videos to come. Anything I can do for you, reach out. Have a good rest of your afternoon. Peace.